What's going on, guys? It's Zach here, bringing you guys another fantasy football video. This one I'm going to be going over the optimal draft strategy if you're in a 12-team snake draft. I'm assuming PPR scoring in this one, and if you're given picks 10 through 12. So this will be the last video in my optimal draft video or draft strategy series. I've already done videos outlining the optimal draft strategy if you have picks 1 through 3, 4 through 6, and then 7 through 9. So if you have any pick in those ranges, I highly recommend you go watch those videos. Although you're more than welcome to watch this one as well. Maybe it'll help you. You guys probably are in several drafts if you're watching this kind of content, so you probably are going to be picking from all across the board, and it's going to be a good idea to sort of see what the best approaches are given where you're being drafted or being forced to draft from. I find that it actually does matter quite a bit where you're drafting from in terms of what you want to go into the draft, in terms of how you plan to build your roster. And obviously, it's really important to look forward throughout the entire sort of ADP range and see what you can expect to get at draft picks later on in the draft, and that's going to help really dictate how you're going to make your decisions earlier on in the draft. So this is sort of my recommendation. Obviously, everything that I say here is going to be fluid depending on how your draft actually goes. I'm simply using the Fantasy Pros composite ADP based off of PPR scoring. So in your draft, there could be some variations here as well, but I think this is a good baseline for you guys to go into. So yeah, with that, let's just get into the first round. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to let me know in the comments. So in round one, I think it's pretty simple. In some leagues, I've seen Travis Kelce drop here. In that scenario, I think Travis Kelce's pretty much an auto pick, although it's pretty rare. I don't think that in general Travis Kelce's going to be making it to picks 10 through 12. He generally goes in that pick 5 to 7, maybe even 8 range, so I wouldn't expect to get Travis Kelce in this draft slot, but obviously that's why he's an auto pick if he makes it to you. Otherwise, I really do just lean towards taking the best wide receiver available. That could be anywhere from Tyreek Hill to Stephon Diggs to Davante Adams to CeeDee Lamb, maybe even A.J. Brown, depending on how you have things ranked. And even though that in a lot of situations the best player, the highest ranked player based off of composite ADP might be a running back, it could be Nick Chubb, it could be Bijan Robinson, it could be Tony Pollard even, depending upon which platform you're on. I just really don't find myself wanting to take a running back in round 1. I really find that I strongly dislike the wide receiver values at the end of round 3, and I really like the wide receiver values in round 2, and I generally want to target having like one running back total in the first 3 rounds, and because of that, I find that round 3 tends to be the best place to do that. I'll talk about that why later, but because I really don't see a world where I can be taking a wide receiver in round 3, there's a pretty significant teardrop there. I just want to be in a spot where I feel really comfortable taking a running back in round 3, and there's plenty of options there that make me feel like I can really comfortably plan on doing that. So in general, I think you should just take the best wide receiver available in round 1 and then go forward based off of that. So in round 2, for me, I think the only exception to taking another wide receiver here in round 2 is going to be if Nick Chubb makes it to you. If Nick Chubb makes it to you, I think that he's just such a high-end talent right now. He's a guy that I really do think could be a top 3 running back this season. I believe I have him ranked as 3rd in my even in PPR rankings. I think he could legitimately finish as a running back 1 this season. And I think for some of you guys, Tony Pollard might fit that mold too. So if you guys are super stoked about Tony Pollard this season, he can obviously be a selection for you guys as well. But again, I think that they're really great running back targets later on in the draft. Picks like rounds 5 through 7 is an area where I generally found myself drafting about 2, maybe even 3 running backs, depending upon my build so far. So I generally like to leave the first 3 rounds only having drafted 1 running back because of just how much value there is at wide receiver early on in the draft. So unless Nick Chubb is available for me there, I tend to find myself taking another wide receiver. Guys that I'm targeting here are guys like Stephon Diggs, CeeDee Lamb, Davante Adams, A.J. Brown, Garrett Wilson. Chris Olave slots in here as well for me. Amon-Ra St. Brown would be another option. Just whatever your highest ranked wide receiver is, I highly recommend that. But I think in general, you're probably looking at something like A.J. Brown or CeeDee Lamb in this slot. So in round 3, I'll start off with the sort of gimme auto picks here. If Mark Andrews makes it to you at the back end of round 3, he's just an auto pick for me. He's a guy that I would be happy to take even at the early part of round 3. So if you're getting him at this kind of value, you just sort of have to take him. Same thing goes for any of the top 3 quarterbacks. They generally go towards the end of round 2, even maybe squeaking into like the middle of round 3. So if any of those 3 make it to you in round 3, I think those guys are great guys to draft here. Although they probably won't. So in this case, it's time to really start looking at taking the best running back on the board. There's a really huge drop in tier and just in quality of the wide receivers in round 3 after T. Higgins. T. Higgins tends to go towards like the middle of the second round. You've got that tier of like Chris Olave, Devonta Smith, T. Higgins, and then you get into a tier where it's like Jerry Jeudy, Christian Watson, Amari Cooper. I find that's a pretty significant tier drop. That you go from guys that I think are like high-end wide receiver 2s to guys that are pretty much almost in a huge tier where it's just like a bunch of like low-end wide receiver 2s, maybe mid-tier wide receiver 2s, but it's a really significant tier drop for me, and it's just not something that I guess get excited about spending a 3rd round draft pick on. So in round 3, I tend to find myself taking running backs if I'm picking towards the end of it. guys like Ramondre Stevenson, Jahmyr Gibbs, Joe Mixon, even Najee if you want to go for a floor play here, although I don't really find myself taking him very much. But there's a lot of really great running back values here at the end of round 3, so I personally would just take the best one, the highest ranked one that you have on the board. So now in round 4, I think you can sort of start looking at Justin Herbert. It is a bit of a reach to be taking Justin Herbert at the early part of round 4. His ADP tends to go towards like the later part of round 4, but he's obviously not going to make it to you at round 5. I have him ranked extremely high, and I personally think it's a totally fine draft pick. So if you want to take Justin Herbert here, you're more than welcome to. If you're very high on Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields as well, I think you could start looking at them here. Same thing with Joe Burrow. If you have 0 running backs at this point in the draft, I really do think you should start taking a look at running backs. The only reason you would have 0 running backs in round 4 would be if you went wide receiver in rounds 1 and 2, and then if like Mark Andrews or one of those top 3 quarterbacks made it to you in round 3. So it's pretty unlikely. You're already off to a really hot start, though, if that did happen, and you'll be fine. But it is time to take a running back here. There's still plenty of high quality guys like Jahmyr Gibbs, Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Miles Sanders. Plenty of other options that you could take here in round 4, and I would just take the highest ranked one that you have left. If you do already have a running back, though, I do recommend taking another wide receiver here in round 4. I do like the values of guys like Keenan Allen, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, and even Jerry Jeudy here in round 4. So I would just take the highest ranked wide receiver if you're at this point and you at least have one running back. So next up, we're in round 5, and if for whatever reason you still don't have a running back at this point, it is absolutely time that you draft one. I don't think there's really any scenario where I would feel comfortable going the first 5 rounds without having drafted a quarterback. So at this point in round 5, it's really time for you to grab one. I would take guys like James Conner, Alexander Mattison, Cam Akers, and J.K. Dobbins. At least one of those guys should be available for you here in round 5. So I would take the highest ranked one of those 4, or if there's another running back that you guys have ranked higher that's available, I would be more than willing to take those guys. Even if you have one running back at this point, I think all 4 of those guys are perfectly good picks. But if you're in a 3 wide receiver league, a league where you're starting 2 running backs, 3 wide receivers in a flex, I do find that I lean towards taking that 3rd wide receiver over getting a 2nd running back. So if you've already taken a tight end or a quarterback, and then you have 2 wide receivers and a running back at this point, I would still lean wide receiver just because I really like the running back values in rounds 6 and 7. If you have 2 running backs already, then this is just a definite you're taking a wide receiver here. I would take a guy like Jerry Jeudy, Mike Williams, Terry McLaurin, even Christian Watson. Plenty of really high quality draft picks here in round 5, and I would just take your highest ranked wide receiver at this point. Now in round 6, if you still don't have a tight end, which you probably don't, given that I've really only suggested that you seek after Travis Kelce or Mark Andrews, and both of those guys are pretty unlikely to be available for you guys in this draft slot. I think Dallas Goedert is a really great draft pick to make here in round 6. I think I can easily see a way for him to finish as the top 3 tight end this season. In fact, I have him ranked as such. And otherwise, really, if you're missing out on Dallas Goedert here, to me, the best thing to do is just punt on the tight end position. Just draft 2 later on in your draft, and then be happy that you're going to have a really stacked starting lineup outside of that. Same thing sort of with quarterback. If you still don't have a quarterback at this point, I think that Trevor Lawrence is a quality pick here in round 6. Depends on your platform whether or not he'll be available here, but there are plenty of leagues where he'll make it to round 6 for you guys, and I do like him as a target in round 6. And sort of again, with Trevor Lawrence, if you miss out on him, I think you're pretty much punting on the quarterback position if you miss out. I find that I generally then go after getting 2 quarterbacks. I'll go after a guy like Tua or Kirk Cousins, and then I'll pair them with a more high upside guy, a guy like Anthony Richardson or a guy like Kyler Murray or something like that. So that's generally my approach with the tight end and quarterback spots. If I don't have one after round 6, I'm pretty much waiting on the position forever. It's sort of the great or late slogan that people throw around in fantasy. That's sort of why that applies here. If you only have one running back at this point, I do think you should reach a bit and take David Montgomery in round 6. However, I think that David Montgomery is just going to be a really high-end, solid running back 2 for you guys. And generally, he goes towards the end of round 7, so it's a bit of a reach to be taking him at the end of round 6 here. But I think it's more than worth taking that risk on him, especially if it's a guy that you're going to need to be starting. You don't want to risk someone else taking him and then you missing out on him. And then if you have 2 running backs, I do think you can play the ADP game, especially in this scenario. You are obviously going to be waiting quite a bit going from round 6 to round 7. It's going to be like a 20 pick difference, so it's a little scary, but I think you should then just take the highest ranked wide receiver on the board. You can probably get away with it if you already have 2 running backs, if you do miss out on David Montgomery, and then you can really stack a really high-end wide receiver here. You can get a guy like Tyler Lockett, whose prospect looks even better with the injury to JSN. Get a guy like Brandon Ayuk, Mike Evans, Marquise Brown, or even Christian Kirk are all guys that I do really love right here in round 6. And then in round 7, sort of the same thing I've told all of you guys, regardless of your draft slot. This is absolutely the round that you should be targeting David Montgomery. If for whatever reason he's gone, then I think you should just be taking the best wide receiver available. There are a couple other running backs around this range I think you could look at. Guys like J.K. Dobbins on ESPN are available in round 7. I think if you really want to look at a guy like Khalil Herbert, Antonio Gibson is someone I'm excited about, James Cook, you could take another running back here, but unless you only have one running back, I don't think it's necessarily a need. I tend to find myself just targeting wide receivers here. Guys like Tyler Lockett, Brandon Ayuk, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson, Mike Evans, plenty of other really high-end receivers are still available here. If all of those guys are gone, then I think you can start to reach at the positions. I think that guys like Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers deserve to go way ahead of where they're being drafted right now at the wide receiver position. And then guys I talked about earlier, guys like Brian Robinson, Antonio Gibson, J.K. Dobbins. You could look at guys like Khalil Herbert or James Cook as well. So round 7 is sort of up in the air for you guys. If you do have 2 running backs already, I do lean towards taking the best wide receiver if David Montgomery's gone. But first order of business, make sure to check if David Montgomery's there. If he is available in round 7, he's just got to be an auto pick for you guys. So to recap, after the first 7 rounds, I do really think that you guys should be prioritizing having at least 3 wide receivers and 2 running backs. You'll probably have one more of each of those positions at some point, or at least one of those positions, assuming you didn't get both a quarterback and a tight end in the first 7 rounds. If you're going to be drafting a quarterback or a tight end in the first 7 rounds, in my opinion, you should be targeting a tier 1 quarterback in round 3, Justin Herbert in round 4, or Trevor Lawrence in round 6. Although you can certainly be looking at other quarterbacks. I personally don't have guys like Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, or Justin Fields ranked very highly, but if you have them ranked as your quarterback 4, I think it's a perfectly fine draft pick to be making around 4. Other guys like outside of Trevor Lawrence, you could be looking at like Deshaun Watson if you're high on him. He could be a fine round 6 pick as well, but it's just not somebody that I find myself targeting very much. At the tight end position, I think you're looking to either get Travis Kelce in round 1, which is pretty unlikely, or Mark Andrews in round 3, which is more likely but still pretty unlikely. Outside of that, I think Dallas Goedert in round 6 is your best bet, and if that doesn't happen, you're pretty much just punting on the position. And then after that, the goal is just going to be to add as much upside to the rest of your roster as possible. If you do happen to be in a league where you've got 3 wide receivers in your starting lineup, then you want to maybe get one more high-end quality starter that you guys can use and just count on week to week, but then you really just want to be targeting upside with all the guys that you don't intend to be starting on a regular basis. So that'll do it for my optimal draft strategy with pick 10 through 12 video. That'll complete the entire series going over my optimal draft strategies. So if you guys have any questions about what you guys should be doing in your drafts, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'm happy to get more specific with you guys. I love interacting with you guys on all this stuff, and it's just a hell of a lot of fun. We're in late August, honestly, at this point. We're really into the thick of draft season. A lot of you guys probably have your drafts this weekend, so I know if you guys have questions, you're going to be more than eager to ask me. So do just hit me up in the comments. I will be responding to every single one of your guys' comments. I do my best to do that, and honestly, I haven't missed yet, so I'll make sure I keep getting back to all of you guys and doing everything I can to help you guys, even though it's been a little chaotic getting all those comments responded to. Up next, I'll be going over my biggest risers and followers over the first couple weeks of the preseason. This week, I've spent a good chunk of time sort of revamping my entire rankings, going over all my projections and seeing how I've really changed things. So the website should be updated tonight by the time that you guys are seeing this video. You'll be seeing this video on Thursday. I'm recording it on Tuesday, August 22nd, so you'll be seeing it 2 days later. By Thursday night, I should have all my rankings up to date, and then on Friday, you guys will be seeing my biggest risers and followers, where I'll be going over how the storylines and the things that have happened this preseason have really changed my opinion on players, and sort of give you guys which guys I think you should be targeting based off of the different training camp hype and preseason usage and all that. So it's been a lot of fun recording all these videos. I'm really getting excited for fantasy football. We've got just over 2 weeks before we get into actual football starting, and then it's just going to be a wild season. So super excited for all this. If you guys haven't subscribed to the channel already, I do highly recommend that you do so. There will be videos coming out every single day throughout the entire rest of the off season, and then I'll be putting out several videos a week as well throughout the course of the regular season. Going to be here all year to help you guys win your leagues this season and really help you dominate as much as possible. So if you haven't subscribed, I do highly recommend you do that. Would really appreciate it as well. We're at like 715 subscribers last time I checked. I've got an outlandish goal of hitting 1,000 by the start of the season, and I kind of think we can hit it, so do everything you can to help. Tell your friends about this show as well. Super exciting. I really love seeing the channel grow, and it's been really cool to see how much of you guys have really helped reach out in the community. If you have already subscribed, please do just give the video a thumbs up. It really helps with the algorithm. It really helps me know that I'm doing a good job, and helps me know that you guys are liking the content, and just really helps the channel grow. So I appreciate all the support you guys have been giving me, and it just really means a lot. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you guys for watching. If you haven't already, please be sure to subscribe to the channel, like the video, check out these other videos here if you haven't. If you want more content, please feel free to follow me on Twitter at RealSteelFFB. I'll be more active on there as the season goes on. Thanks. Catch you later.